Mr. President, and I use that term very loosely. I don't know what little power play you think you're pulling by summoning me here, but let me be crystal clear. I am not one of your scared little Republican congressmen who kiss your ring. I represent actual people, real Americans, not your billionaire friends and Mar-a-Lago cronies. Ilhan Omar stood in front of the resolute desk, arms crossed, voice dripping with contempt. She'd refused the chair that had been offered, wanted to stand, wanted to look down at him, wanted to show she wasn't intimidated. And frankly, she continued, voice rising, an elderly man with 91 felony indictments, who can barely string a coherent sentence together, and who incited an insurrection against his own government, probably shouldn't be lecturing anyone about anything. So if this meeting is about my statements on Palestine about calling out Israel's apartheid regime, you can take your fake outrage, and you done. President Trump interrupted calmly from behind his desk. He didn't look angry, didn't even look annoyed, just sat there with a slight smile like he was watching something mildly entertaining. It was January 28th, 2025, just over a week into Trump's second term. The Oval Office on a cold winter afternoon light, streaming through the tall windows. This wasn't a normal congressional meeting. There were no staff taking notes, no photographers, just Trump behind the resolute desk FBI Director, Christopher Wray, standing off to the side with thick folders, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem with her own files, and 2 Secret Service agents by the doors. Omar had been summoned by White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles that morning. The President requests your presence at 3:00 p.m., urgent national security matter. No details, no explanation, just the summons. She thought she knew what this was about, thought Trump was trying to intimidate her over her pro-Palestinian statements, over her criticism of Israel, over her tweets calling out U.S. foreign policy, so she'd come ready to fight. Alert the media, have cameras waiting outside, stand up to the bully president, show her supporters she was fearless. Now she stood in the Oval Office thinking she had the upper hand, thinking her media profile protected her, thinking Trump was just another old man she could dominate with righteous anger, like she'd dominated every other confrontation in her political career. She had no idea what was about to happen. "No, I'm not done," she snapped at his interruption. "You want to talk about national security? You're the national security threat. You're a racist who banned Muslims from entering this country. You're a fascist who puts children in cages. You're everything wrong with America wrapped up in a cheap suit and bad spray tan." She leaned forward on his desk, aggressive, confrontational. "You think you can silence me? I have millions of followers. I have CNN and MSNBC and every major progressive organization defending me. You're a weak old man playing tough guy because that's all you know how to do. Your own party barely tolerates you. Half your cabinet thinks you're losing your mind and you want to threaten me." Trump still didn't react the way she expected, didn't get angry, didn't yell back, just sat there watching her with that same slight smile. "I'm not scared of you," Omar continued, voice shaking with anger. "Now I faced worse than you. I fled a civil war. I came to this country with nothing. I've been targeted by racists my whole life. You're just another bully who thinks his power makes him strong. But you're nothing. You're a pathetic old man who sit down." Trump's voice suddenly cut through her rant. Not loud, not angry, just cold, absolute. The voice of someone who'd run billion-dollar companies and wasn't asking. Omar paused mid-sentence. Something in his tone made her hesitate. I said, "Sit down." Trump repeated his voice, still calm, but carrying an edge of steel underneath. "Because what I'm about to show you is going to change your entire life, and you're going to want to be sitting when you hear it." For the first time, Omar felt a flicker of uncertainty. This wasn't playing out like she'd expected. Trump should have been yelling back at her by now, should have been getting defensive, but he looked completely relaxed, almost amused. Slowly, she lowered herself into the chair facing his desk, the confidence starting to waver just slightly. Trump leaned forward, his expression changing. The slight smile disappeared. What replaced it was something colder, more serious. "You think you're here because of your Palestine statements?" he said quietly. "You think I give a damn about your tweets? I don't care what you say about Israel. I don't care about your rallies. I don't care about your interviews with CNN. You're here because for the past 6 months, the FBI has been investigating you for terrorism financing and immigration fraud." He pushed a thick folder across the desk toward her. "And this morning, I declassified all of it." Omar felt her blood run cold. She looked at the folder like it was a snake. Trump continued his voice. "Matter of fact, your brother-in-law in Mogadishu, Ahmed Noor, say he's an al-Shabaab financier. Treasury designated his money transfer business as a terrorism financing entity. And the money you've been wiring to him, $78,000 over 3 years, goes directly to terrorists." Omar's mouth went dry. "I don't know what your citizenship." Trump kept going, ignoring her attempted interruption. "Obtained through fraud. You claimed your mother died in Somalia. She's alive, living in London. We have passport records of you visiting her. You claimed you came as a refugee fleeing violence. You used a fake family name to qualify for refugee status. You committed immigration fraud to get here." He leaned back in his chair. "So, here's what's going to happen. You have 72 hours to resign from Congress and leave the United States voluntarily. You renounce your fraudulent citizenship. You get on a plane. You go back to Somalia or wherever else will take you. Do that. And all of this stays quiet. You can spin your resignation however you want. Health reasons, family reasons, whatever story you want to tell." He paused. "Let that sink in. Or you refuse, and tomorrow morning I hold a press conference in the Rose Garden. I declassify every single page of this investigation. The terrorism financing, the immigration fraud, the FBI watch list you've been on since 2018. I sign an executive order initiating denaturalization proceedings on national security grounds. DHS arrests you. You get detained while you fight it in court for the next 2 years. You lose because the evidence is overwhelming. Your citizenship gets stripped and then deports you to Somalia publicly with every camera in the world watching." Trump's voice got quieter. "Easy way or hard way, your choice. You've got 72 hours. Omar sat frozen. This couldn't be real. This had to be a bluff, some kind of intimidation tactic. You can't do this. This is unconstitutional. You can't just strip a member of Congress." "Director Wray," Trump said, not taking his eyes off Omar. "Show her what we have, so she understands this isn't a bluff." FBI Director Christopher Wray stepped forward, opening one of his folders. His expression was completely neutral, professional. This was just evidence to him. And as Wray began laying out 6 months of investigation, Omar realized with growing horror that this wasn't a bluff at all. This was real, and her entire life was about to be destroyed. To understand how we got here, how the woman who'd been summoned expecting to bully the president ended up facing deportation, you have to go back 4 hours earlier. When Omar was still confident this was just another performance opportunity. 4 hours earlier, Ilhan Omar sat in her congressional office reviewing talking points with her communications team. The White House call had come at 10 that morning. Chief of Staff Susie Wilds. Formal and brief. The President requests Representative Omar's presence at the Oval Office at 3:00 p.m. today. Urgent national security matter. Please confirm attendance. No details beyond that. No indication of subject matter. Just the summons. Omar's communications director, a young progressive activist named Maya Hernandez, looked concerned. National security matter is vague. Could be anything. Should we try to get more information before you go? Omar waved dismissively. It's obvious what this is about. I've been all over cable news calling out Israel's genocide in Gaza, calling for cutting military aid. Trump's donors are furious. This is him trying to intimidate me, trying to make me back down. Her chief of staff wasn't so sure. The phrasing is unusual, though. Usually, when they want to complain about policy statements, they just have a staffer call. The president personally requesting your presence is different. Because he thinks he can bully me in person, Omar said with confidence. He thinks if he gets me in the Oval Office, I'll be scared, that I'll moderate my positions. He has no idea who he's dealing with. She felt supremely confident. She'd become one of the most recognizable members of Congress, part of the squad with AOC Rashida Tlaib Ayanna Pressley, nearly 4 million Twitter followers, constant appearances on MSNBC and CNN. She'd made a career out of being the bold progressive who stood up to power, who wasn't afraid of anyone. Trump had attacked her repeatedly during his first term, tweeted that she should go back to Somalia, called her an anti-Semite. Conservative media had obsessed over her for years, and every single attack had made her more famous, more powerful, more beloved by her base. She'd fundraised millions off Trump's attacks. This would be no different. Trump trying to intimidate her. Her standing strong, walking out and doing a media blitz about how she'd told him off. Her supporters eating it up. More fundraising. More fame. This was an opportunity. Alert our media contacts, Omar instructed Maya. I want friendly reporters waiting outside the White House. After the meeting, I'll do a statement about whatever authoritarian nonsense he tried to pull. CNN will probably want me live. Maya nodded already, texting contacts. What if he actually has something serious? What if this is about something we don't know about? Omar laughed. Like what? I'm a member of Congress. I have constitutional protections. What's he going to do? The worst he can do is yell at me, and I'm very good at handling old men who yell. She spent the next hour preparing. Not defensive preparation, aggressive preparation. She wasn't going to the Oval Office to be lectured. She was going to make a statement to show Trump and the world that she wouldn't be intimidated. She rehearsed lines in her head, planned how she'd stand instead of sit, how she'd interrupt him if he started his usual rambling, how she'd call out his racism and incompetence to his face. It would be legendary. Her staff would leak details. Progressives would celebrate her courage. What Omar didn't know, couldn't have imagined, was that while she was preparing her performance, Trump had spent the morning in the Situation Room reviewing 6 months of FBI investigation. Evidence she didn't know existed, a case she'd never seen coming, and he'd specifically chosen today because he had everything he needed to end her career and deport her from the country she'd fraudulently entered. At 8 that morning, hours before Omar's summons, President Trump sat in the White House Situation Room with a small group FBI Director Christopher Wray, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, NSA Director General Sarah Mitchell, White House Counsel Todd Blanche, and Chief of Staff Susie Wilds. The secure conference room table was covered with classified folders, financial records, immigration files. 6 months of investigation compiled into evidence that would destroy a sitting member of Congress. Trump looked fresh, energized. He'd been waiting for this moment. All right, walk me through everything. I want to know every detail before she gets here this afternoon. FBI Director Wray opened his first folder with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent 30 years building cases. We initiated the investigation 6 months ago when Treasury flagged unusual wire transfers from Representative Omar to Somalia. The amounts were structured $3,000 here, $5,000 there, always just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. That's a red flag for money laundering or terrorism financing. He pulled out financial records. We traced the transfers. The recipient is Ahmed Nora, based in Mogadishu. He's Omar's brother-in-law, her first husband's brother. Ahmed operates a Hala money transfer network called Tawakkal Express. Hala? Trump asked. Informal money transfer system common in Somalia and throughout the Middle East and Africa. Wray explained, based on trust and family networks, very difficult to trace through traditional banking systems, but we obtained court orders and worked with Somali sources. Treasury designated Tawakkal Express as a terrorism financing entity in 2023. Ahmed Noor Say is on the FBI terrorism watch list. He showed surveillance photos from Mogadishu, a man in traditional Somali dress outside a storefront with peeling paint. This is Ahmed, and we have evidence, intercepts informant reports, financial tracking that he funnels money from Tawakkal to al-Shabaab operatives throughout southern Somalia. Trump studied the photos, and Omar is sending him money, $78,000 over the past 3 years, Wray confirmed. 17 separate wire transfers, all structured to avoid reporting. We've traced at least 34,000 of that money directly to individuals on terrorism watch lists. Bank accounts belonging to known al-Shabaab commanders and facilitators. He laid out a flowchart showing the money movement. Omar wires money to Ahmed. Ahmed moves it through Tawakkal. It disperses to multiple individuals. Some of those individuals are designated terrorists. It's not direct. She could claim she didn't know what Ahmed was doing with the money, but the pattern is undeniable. And she's smart enough to know exactly what her brother-in-law does. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem presented the next section, her voice tight with controlled anger. The terrorism financing is serious, but the immigration fraud is what gives us the legal basis for denaturalization. Her entire presence in the United States is based on lies. She opened immigration files dating back decades. Representative Omar's official biography says she came to the United States in 1992 as a refugee fleeing the Somali Civil War. Says her mother died in Somalia when she was young. Says her father brought her and her siblings to America to escape the violence. All of that is used to maintain her image as a refugee success story. It's also almost entirely false. Noem pulled out documentation. Her mother didn't die in Somalia. Her name is Fedumo Aden. She's alive and has been living in London since 1991. We have British passport records. We have entry and exit stamps showing Omar has visited her mother in London at least 8 times since 2015, but publicly, Omar claims her mother died when she was a child. Trump leaned forward. So, she's been lying about her dead mother being alive. It gets worse, Noem continued. The refugee application that brought her family to the United States in 1992 was filed under the name Omar family. But birth records we've obtained from Somalia suggest she was actually born Ilhan Noor, Say last name, as Ahmed, the al-Shabaab financier. We believe she used a different family name Omar instead of Noor Say to qualify for refugee status under family reunification provisions. She showed the documents. If she was actually Ilhan Omar, she wouldn't have qualified under the Omar family application. So she assumed a different identity. That's immigration fraud. Fraud that allowed her to enter the country and eventually become a citizen. Can we prove that? White House counsel Todd Blanche asked, "Birth records from Somalia during a civil war aren't exactly reliable." "We have multiple sources," Noam said. "Birth certificate filed in 1982 listing her as Ilhan Omar. School records from Kenya, refugee camp using that name. Testimony from individuals who knew the family. And here's the smoking gun. Her marriage records." She pulled out more documents. Omar married Ahmed Hersi in Islamic ceremony in 2002. They had 2 children. Then, in 2009, she married Ahmed Noure Sahed Elmi in a legal civil ceremony. DNA testing from Somali sources suggests Elmi is her biological brother. She married her brother likely to help him obtain immigration status. Then she divorced Elmi in 2017 and legally married Hersi in 2018. Trump looked disgusted. She married her brother. We can't prove that definitively without DNA testing here, which she'd refuse. No admitted. But the evidence is strong. Same family name, same tribal affiliation, sources saying they're siblings. The timing of the marriage aligned perfectly with him needing immigration status. Then she divorced him once he had his papers. It's a classic immigration fraud scheme. NSA Director Mitchell added another layer. "We've also been monitoring her communications under visa warrant. She's in regular contact with Somali government officials, Muslim Brotherhood-linked individuals. Some of these contacts are concerning from a counterintelligence perspective. She showed intercepts. We have calls where she discusses U.S. policy towards Somalia with Somali government ministers, where she appears to be coordinating positions, where she refers to Somalia as we and America as they. Nothing explicitly illegal, but the pattern suggests her primary loyalty is to Somalia and Islamic political movements, not to the United States. Trump absorbed it all. 6 months of investigation, terrorism financing, immigration fraud, fraudulent marriages, foreign communications suggesting split loyalty. It was overwhelming. White House counsel Blanche outlined the legal strategy. We have 3 potential paths. 1, criminal prosecution for terrorism financing and immigration fraud. But that takes years, requires convincing a D.C. jury, and she'd be free while fighting it. To push for congressional expulsion requires 2/3 vote in the House. Unlikely to get that many Democrats to vote for it, even with this evidence. 3, denaturalization. Explain that. Trump said, "If citizenship was obtained through fraud or material misrepresentation, it can be revoked." Blanche explained. Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 340. We file a civil denaturalization complaint in federal court. Present evidence that she lied on her applications about her name, her family, her background. If the judge agrees the fraud was material to obtaining citizenship, it can be stripped. How long does that take? Could take 2 years if she fights every step, Blanche admitted. But here's the play: we offer her a choice. Resign from Congress and leave the country voluntarily within 72 hours. She can tell whatever story she wants. Health reasons, family reasons, going back to help Somalia. We don't press charges, don't pursue denaturalization. It all stays quiet. And if she refuses, then we go nuclear. Press conference announcing the investigation. Declassify enough to show the public she's a terrorism financier and immigration fraud. File denaturalization proceedings. She'll fight it. but she'll lose. The evidence is too strong. And while she's fighting, she's toxic. No Democrat will defend her. She loses in court. Citizenship gets stripped. She becomes a deportable alien. ICE takes custody and deports her to Somalia. Trump smiled slowly. I like it. She gets to choose, but either way, she's gone. WS added the political calculation. If she leaves quietly, we avoid a media circus. No accusations of targeting Muslims or immigrants. She just fades away. If she fights, it becomes a huge story. But we have the evidence to back it up. Either way, works. Trump made his decision. Set up the meeting for 3:00 p.m. Don't tell her what it's about. Let her walk in, thinking she's going to lecture me about Palestine or whatever. Let her get comfortable. Then I'm going to give her the choice, and I want to see her face when she realizes she's finished. At 2:30, Omar's motorcade arrived at the White House. She'd alerted friendly media that she was meeting with the president. CNN had a reporter stationed outside. MSNBC was on alert for a possible live interview afterward. Omar walked through security with her head high, ready for confrontation, ready to stand up to the bully. She'd spent the car ride rehearsing her lines, how she'd call out his racism, his incompetence, his authoritarian impulses. She was escorted through the West Wing, down the hallway to the Oval Office. The door opened, and that's when everything went wrong. The room wasn't set up for a normal meeting. No staff taking notes, no photographers, just Trump behind his desk, looking relaxed. FBI Director Wray standing with folders. DHS Secretary Noom with files. Secret Service at the doors. Something was off, but Omar was committed to her plan. She refused the offered chair, stood in front of the desk, and launched into her prepared attack. Mr. President, and I use that term very loosely, I don't know what little power play you think you're pulling. She went off every insult she'd prepared. Every attack she'd rehearsed, called him elderly, senile, racist, fascist, brought up his indictments, his mental decline, his authoritarian impulses, everything she'd been saying on Twitter, but now to his face. Trump just sat there, let her vent, didn't interrupt. Slight smile like he was enjoying the show. When she finished breathing hard, feeling powerful, he asked simply, "You done?" She started again. "More insults. Sit down." His voice cut through cold and absolute. And for the first time, Omar felt real fear because Trump wasn't reacting the way she'd expected. And that meant this wasn't what she'd expected. "I said, sit down," Trump repeated, "because what I'm about to show you is going to change your entire life." Slowly, she sat, the confidence draining away. "You think you're here about Palestine?" Trump said quietly. "I don't care about your tweets. You're here because you're a national security threat, and I'm giving you one chance to leave quietly before I destroy you publicly." He pushed the folder across the desk. "Director Wray, show her what we have." And Omar's world began to collapse. FBI Director Wray stepped forward, opening his folder with practiced efficiency. He'd presented evidence in hundreds of briefings over his career. Terrorists, spies, criminals. This was just another case. The fact that the subject was sitting across from him in the Oval Office didn't change the evidence. "Congresswoman Omar," he began, his voice neutral and professional. "For the past 6 months, the FBI has been conducting a counterterrorism investigation involving financial transactions between you and individuals designated as terrorism supporters. Let me walk you through what we found." He pulled out financial records, laid them on the desk where she could see, bank statements with highlighted transactions, wire transfer confirmations, each one carefully documented. Starting in January 2022, you began making regular wire transfers to an individual in Mogadishu, Somalia, Ahmed Noor Say, your brother-in-law. The transfers were structured always under $10,000 to avoid currency transaction reporting requirements, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, $4,000. Over 3 years, 17 separate transfers totaling $78,000. Omar tried to speak, but Ray continued smoothly. Now, sending money to family overseas isn't illegal. Many immigrants do it, but we investigated where the money was going. Ahmed Noor Say operates a business called Tawakkal Express. It's a Hala money transfer network. He showed her surveillance photos, a storefront in Mogadishu. People lined up outside. Tawakkal presents itself as a legitimate money transfer service for the Somali diaspora. But in November 2023, the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control designated Tawakkal Express as a terrorism financing entity because we'd gathered evidence that it was being used to funnel money to al-Shabaab. Omar's face had gone pale. I didn't know Ahmed Noor Say is on the FBI's terrorism watch list, Ray said, showing the classified designation. We have intercepts of his communications with known al-Shabaab commanders. We have informant testimony about his role in the organization's financial network. We have surveillance showing him meeting with designated terrorists. He laid out the money trail. We traced your transfers through Tawakkal's accounts. The $78,000 you sent didn't stay with Ahmed. It moved. We tracked at least $34,000 going to bank accounts belonging to individuals on terrorism watch lists, al-Shabaab facilitators, weapons purchasers, people actively engaged in terrorism against the Somali government and African Union forces. He pulled out photos of some of these individuals. Men in tactical gear, men with weapons. These are some of the people who received money that originated from your wire transfers. This man, Abdullahi Hassan, is a known al-Shabaab commander in Lower Shabelle region. He received $8,000 that we traced back through the network to your transfer from March 2023. This man, Mohammed Abdi, is an explosives expert. He received $6,000 that came from your August 2023 transfer. Omar looked like she might be sick. I was sending money to family. I had no idea what Ahmed was doing with it. You're a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Ray said flatly. You receive regular classified briefings on al-Shabaab and terrorism financing networks in East Africa. You've been briefed specifically on Hala networks being used for terrorism financing. You knew or should have known exactly what you were doing. He showed more evidence. We also have phone records. You spoke with Ahmed 17 times over the same 3-year period, always just before or just after a wire transfer. On 4 of those calls, you discussed the political situation in Somalia, security conditions, information that could be useful to al-Shabaab in planning operations. I was just asking about family, Omar protested weakly. On a call from March 2023, you told Ahmed that U.S. military support for African Union forces was being reduced. That information was classified at the time. You learned it in a Foreign Affairs Committee briefing 2 days earlier. You passed it to someone on a terrorism watch list. Ray closed that section of his folder. The legal standard for material support to terrorism is providing any support, including financial, to designated terrorists, regardless of whether you specifically intend to support terrorism. You sent $78,000 that ended up in terrorists' hands. That's a federal crime, carrying up to 20 years in prison. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem stepped forward next. She was a former governor, Not a career law enforcement official, but she'd spent months reviewing immigration files, and her anger at what she'd found was barely contained. "Congresswoman," she began, her voice tight, "your entire presence in the United States is based on fraud. Your refugee application, your asylum claims, your citizenship application, all of it built on lies." She opened the immigration files, documents yellowed with age, applications from the 1990s. Your official biography says you came to the United States in 1992 as a refugee fleeing the Somali Civil War. You were 8 years old. You say your mother died in Somalia when she was young. You say your father brought you and your siblings to America to escape the violence. You've told this story hundreds of times. It's your origin story. The refugee who became a congresswoman. Noam pulled out a document. This is a British passport record for Fadumo Aden issued in 1991. Your mother, who according to you died in Somalia in the 1980s. Omar's eyes went wide. That's not... Your mother is alive, Congresswoman. She's been living in London since 1991. We have 32 years of records, passport renewals, utility bills, National Health Service records, and we have records of you visiting her. Noam showed entry and exit records. You visited London in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. 8 visits, each time surveillance cameras at Heathrow captured you, and phone location data shows you spending time at your mother's residence in East London. She laid out photos, airport security camera images showing Omar, phone location data plotted on maps of London. You've been visiting your supposedly dead mother for years, while publicly claiming she died when you were a child. That's fraud. Lying about a deceased parent in your refugee narrative. I never said she died. Omar tried. I said I grew up without her. Noam cut her off by pulling up quotes. Interview with CNN 2019. I lost my mother when I was very young in Somalia. Interview with Time magazine 2020. My mother died during the Civil War. Speech at Refugee Advocacy Event 2021. As someone who lost her mother to the violence in Somalia, you've said it repeatedly, and it's a lie. She moved to the next issue, but that's just one lie. The bigger fraud is your name. Your refugee application was filed under the Omar family, but you weren't born in Omar. You were born Ilhan Noor. She showed birth records. This is a birth certificate from Somalia, 1982. Ilhan Noor Say, daughter of Noor Sahed Ibrahim, not an Omar. You used a different family name to qualify for refugee status under family reunification provisions. That's identity fraud. Birth records from Somalia during a civil war are unreliable. Omar's voice was shaking. Now we have corroborating evidence. Noam said, school records from Dab refugee camp in Kenya listing you as Ilhan Nora. Testimony from individuals who knew your family in Somalia, identifying you by that name, and most damning, your marriage records. She pulled out marriage certificates. In 2002, you married Ahmed Hersi in Islamic ceremony, had 2 children with him. Then, in 2009, she married Ahmed Noure Sahed Elmi in a legal civil ceremony in Minnesota. Same last name as your birth name. We have evidence suggesting Elmi is her biological brother. You married your brother to commit immigration fraud, helping him obtain legal status. That's a lie, Omar said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then take a DNA test, Noam challenged. Right now, we'll compare your DNA to Ahmed Elm's. If you're not related, this theory is destroyed. If you are siblings, you committed marriage fraud. Omar said nothing. You divorced Elma in 2017. Noam continued. Right after he obtained citizenship, then you legally married Hersey in 2018. Classic immigration fraud pattern. Marry a family member to get them papers. Divorce them once they have status. Go back to your real spouse. She stacked all the documents. Fake identity on refugee application. Lying about your mother being dead. Fraudulent marriage to your brother. Every single piece of your immigration history is fraudulent. That means your citizenship was obtained illegally. And illegal citizenship can be revoked. NSA Director General Sarah Mitchell presented the communications intelligence. She was a career signals intelligence officer, had spent 3 decades intercepting enemy communications. Presenting intercepts of an American congresswoman felt surreal, but the evidence was the evidence. We've been monitoring your communications under FISA warrant since June 2025, Mitchell said, without preamble. The warrant was approved based on probable cause that you were engaged in activities threatening national security. What we found confirms those suspicions. She showed call logs. Over 6 months, you made 43 phone calls to Somali government officials. Not casual calls, strategic calls. You spoke with the Somali foreign minister 7 times, the defense minister 3 times, members of parliament 12 times, various other officials. I'm allowed to speak with foreign governments, Omar said. It's part of congressional oversight. The content of those calls raises concerns, Mitchell interrupted. She played an audio clip, Omar's voice speaking in Somali with English subtitles appearing on a screen. Omar, the Americans are reducing their support for AMISOM. This creates an opportunity for the government to negotiate directly with clan elders in the South without U.S. interference. Somali official, when will the reduction begin? Omar, the briefing said March, but the administration doesn't want it public yet. Mitchell stopped the audio. That was you discussing classified U.S. military planning with a foreign government information you received in a classified Foreign Affairs Committee briefing. You disclosed it to Somalia before it was public. She played another clip. Omar, I'm working with my colleagues to block the aid package to Kenya. If we can cut their funding, they'll pull troops from AMISOM and Somalia will have more autonomy. Mitchell stopped it. You're discussing your efforts to undermine a U.S. ally's military operation not because it's bad for America, because you want Somalia to have more autonomy. Another clip. Omar, we are working on this together. I represent the Somali people in Congress. Their interests are my interests. Mitchell looked at Omar. You don't represent the Somali people. You represent Minnesota's 5th District. You're a U.S. Congresswoman, not a Somali government representative. But you consistently refer to Somalia as we and America as they in these calls. She showed more intercepts. You've also been in contact with individuals linked to Muslim Brotherhood. 3 calls with Mohammed Badi, an Egyptian national living in Qatar, with ties to the Brotherhood. Multiple encrypted messages with organizations designated as Brotherhood fronts. The pattern suggests your political loyalty is to Islamic political movements, not to the United States. This is Islamophobic profiling, Omar said desperately. You're targeting me because I'm Muslim. We're investigating you because you send money to terrorists and pass classified information to foreign governments, Mitchell said boldly. Your religion is irrelevant. Your actions are what matter. White House counsel Todd Blanche stepped forward with the legal framework. He'd been a federal prosecutor before joining private practice and then the White House. He knew how to explain complex legal procedures in simple terms. Congresswoman Omar, Let me explain the legal situation you're facing under the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 340. Citizenship obtained through fraud or material misrepresentation can be revoked. The standard is civil, not criminal preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. He showed the statute. We file a denaturalization complaint in federal district court. We present evidence that you lied on your applications about your name, your family, your background. The evidence Secretary Noem just showed you. If the judge finds that the fraud was material to obtaining citizenship, your naturalization is revoked. I'll fight it in court, Omar said, trying to sound defiant but coming across scared. You'll lose, Blanche said bluntly. We have documentary evidence of fraud. Birth certificates showing a different name. Your mother being alive when you claimed she died. Marriage records suggesting fraud. Phone records showing you visiting her in London. The evidence is overwhelming. He pulled out case precedents. Here's Masliningjack versus United States from 2017. Supreme Court ruling on denaturalization. The court held that material fraud in immigration proceedings is grounds for revocation. Here's United States versus OD from 2015. Citizenship revoked for immigration fraud. The defendant fought for 2 years. She lost. Got deported. Once your citizenship is revoked, he continued, you become a deportable alien. Immigration and Customs Enforcement takes custody. You're detained pending deportation proceedings. Given Somalia's cooperation, you'd be deported there within 90 days. Omar's hands were shaking. You can't deport a member of Congress. You won't be a member of Congress, Blanche said. Once these charges become public, you'll be forced to resign or be expelled. The House isn't going to keep a member facing denaturalization for terrorism financing and immigration fraud. You'll be out within a week. He showed the timeline. Here's how it plays out if you fight this. Tomorrow, the president holds a press conference, announces the investigation, declassifies enough evidence to show you're a terrorism financier and immigration fraud. The media goes crazy. Your Democratic colleagues distance themselves immediately. They can't defend terrorism financing. Within 48 hours, the House votes on expulsion. 2/3 majority required. With this evidence public, you'll get maybe 30 votes in your favor. You're expelled. We filed the denaturalization complaint. You fight it. Takes 18 months to 2 years. You lose. The evidence is too strong. Citizenship revoked. IC arrests you. You're detained at an immigration facility. Could fight deportation, but you have no basis. Somalia is safe for you. You get deported publicly, with every camera in the world watching. He closed his folder. That's the hard way. Trump had been sitting quietly letting his team present the evidence. Now he leaned forward, taking back control of the meeting. So, here's the situation, he said, his voice conversational now, almost friendly. We have you cold on terrorism financing, 78,000 to Al-Shabaab. That's 20 years in prison. We have you on immigration fraud that gets your citizenship stripped and you deported. We have you on disclosing classified information. That's more prison time. He spread his hands. You fought back pretty hard when you came in here. Called me senile, said I can't string sentences together. Said I'm weak and pathetic. That was a bad call on your part, because now I'm not inclined to be generous. Omar sat frozen. All the earlier arrogance completely gone. But I'm a deal maker, Trump continued, and I'm going to offer you a deal anyway. Not because I like you, because I don't want to spend the next 2 years dealing with this circus. So, here's the offer. One time, take it or leave it. He counted on his fingers. You resign from Congress today, effective immediately. You hold a press conference tomorrow. You say you're resigning for health reasons or family reasons or to spend more time helping Somalia. Whatever story you want, you renounce your U.S. citizenship. You leave the country within 72 hours. You go to Somalia or London to stay with your alive mother or wherever else will take you. You never come back. Do that, and we don't prosecute. We don't pursue denaturalization. We don't hold a press conference exposing everything. It all stays quiet. You get to control your narrative. You fade away. Maybe you end up in Somali politics where you clearly want to be anyway. He leaned back. Or you tell me to go to hell. You walk out of here thinking you can fight this. And tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I stand in the Rose Garden with Director Ray, Secretary Noam, and all of this evidence. We make it all public, every piece of it. The terrorism financing, the immigration fraud, your mother being alive, the brother marriage, all of it. The media goes insane. Your colleagues abandon you. You're expelled from Congress within a week. We file denaturalization. You fight it from a detention facility for 2 years. You lose. You get deported anyway. But instead of leaving quietly, you leave in handcuffs on a deportation flight with cameras rolling. The whole world watches Ilhan Omar, the great progressive champion, get deported for immigration fraud and terrorism financing. Trump's voice got quieter. Easy way or hard way, your choice. But either way, you're leaving. The only question is whether you control how it happens or I do. He glanced at his watch. It's 3:45 now. You have until noon Friday. That's 72 hours. If you resign by noon Friday and book a flight out of the country, we never speak of this again. If you don't, I'm calling that press conference. What's it going to be? Omar's voice came out as a whisper. This is unconstitutional. You can't force a member of Congress. I'm not forcing anything. Trump said, I'm giving you a choice. Leave quietly or leave in disgrace. But you're leaving because you committed fraud to get here, and you've been funding terrorists since you got here. You don't belong in Congress. You don't belong in this country. He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. 72 hours. Director Ray will give you his card. When you decide, call him. If I don't hear from you by Friday at noon, turn on Fox News at 10 a.m. You'll see yourself getting destroyed in real time. Omar stood on shaky legs. I need time to consult with lawyers. Consult with whoever you want, Trump said. But understand, if this goes public, no lawyer can save you. The evidence is too strong. You'll end up in Somalia either way. This way, you get to leave with some dignity. That way, you leave in handcuffs. He gestured to the door. 72 hours. Don't waste them. Omar left the Oval Office in a daze. The Secret Service agents escorted her out through the West Wing. She'd arrived 90 minutes ago, ready to lecture the president. She was leaving, facing deportation. The reporters she'd alerted were waiting outside. CNN, MSNBC. She walked past them without a word, ignoring their shouted questions. Got in her car, drove back to the Capitol in silence. Her mind raced. This couldn't be real. This had to be a bluff. Some kind of intimidation tactic. But the evidence, the photos, the recordings, her own voice on NSA intercepts, the immigration documents, it was all real. She spent that evening with lawyers, not her usual progressive activist attorneys, criminal defense lawyers, immigration lawyers, people who dealt with serious federal charges. They reviewed what she told them about the evidence, and every single one gave her the same advice. Take the deal. If even half of what they showed you is real, one lawyer said, You can't fight this. Terrorism financing is a strict liability crime. Doesn't matter if you intended to support terrorism. You sent money to someone on the watch list. It went to terrorists. You're guilty. That's 20 years. The immigration fraud. Another lawyer added, that's grounds for denaturalization. If you lied on your applications, used a fake name, your citizenship can be revoked. We could fight it, but with the evidence you described, we'd lose. And you can't stay in Congress through this. A third lawyer said, the moment it becomes public, the pressure for expulsion will be overwhelming. Democrats won't defend you. They can't. Terrorism, financing, immigration fraud. You'd be toxic. But Omar couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that Trump had beaten her. That she'd walked into the Oval Office thinking she had power, and walked out facing deportation. She spent Wednesday in denial, didn't resign, didn't call Ray, told herself this would blow over, that Trump was bluffing, that he wouldn't actually go public with this. Thursday, she started to panic, called more lawyers, all gave the same advice. Take the deal. Leave quietly. Fighting would only make it worse. Thursday night, she drafted a resignation letter, stared at it for hours, couldn't bring herself to sign it. Friday morning at 9:00 a.m., her phone rang. FBI Director Ray, Congresswoman, it's 9:00 a.m., you have 3 hours. The President is prepared to hold the press conference at noon if he doesn't hear from me that you've resigned. I need your answer. I need more time, Omar said. You've had 72 hours. What's your decision? Silence on the line. Then I'm not resigning. This is unconstitutional, and I'm going to fight it. Understood. Ray said, the press conference will begin at noon. I'd advise you not to make any statements until you see what evidence we're releasing. It'll be worse than you think. He hung up. At 11:45 a.m., the White House announced an urgent presidential press conference in the Rose Garden at noon. Topic: National security matter involving member of Congress. The media went insane with speculation. Which member? What did they do? By noon, every network had cut to live coverage. Trump walked out to the Rose Garden podium at 12:02 p.m. Behind him, FBI Director Ray, DHS Secretary Noom, Attorney General Pam Bondi, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. The presence of that group told experienced Washington reporters this was serious. Trump began without preamble. I'm here to announce that the FBI has concluded a 6-month counterterrorism investigation into Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. The investigation found that Representative Omar sent $78,000 to individuals designated as terrorism supporters. That money was used to fund al-Shabaab terrorist activities in Somalia. The press corps erupted, shouted questions. Trump ignored them. The investigation also found that Representative Omar obtained her U.S. citizenship through fraud. She lied about her identity, lied about her family, and engaged in marriage fraud to help a relative obtain immigration status. Based on this evidence, the Department of Homeland Security is initiating denaturalization proceedings. More chaos in the press section. Director Ray will now present some of the evidence we've declassified for this briefing. Ray stepped to the podium with a binder, began laying out the case, the wire transfers to Ahmadiyat Noor Sai, the designation of Tawakal Express as a terrorism financing entity, the money trail to al-Shabaab, photos of terrorists who received the money. Then Noom presented the immigration fraud, the birth certificate showing a different name, passport records showing her mother was alive, marriage records suggesting fraud. They showed just enough to make the case publicly without revealing classified sources and methods, but it was devastating. Networks split screens the Rose Garden press conference on one side, Omar's congressional office on the other, where reporters were massing. Omar's office released a statement. "This is a politically motivated attack on a Muslim woman who dares to speak truth to power. President Trump is using law enforcement to target his political opponents. This is fascism, but the evidence was too strong. Even progressive media couldn't fully defend it. Yes, Trump had political motivations, but the bank records were real. The terrorism watch list designations were real. The immigration documents were real." Within hours, Democratic leadership issued careful statements. Speaker Haki Jeff. "These are serious allegations that must be fully investigated. If true, they would represent conduct unbecoming of a member of Congress." By Friday evening, calls for her resignation were coming from Democrats, not the squad. They stayed silent. But moderate Democrats from swing districts couldn't afford to defend terrorism financing. Saturday morning, the House Ethics Committee announced an emergency investigation. By Saturday afternoon, articles of expulsion had been drafted. Sunday, Omar appeared on MSNBC, insisted she was innocent, that the evidence was manufactured, that this was political persecution. But she looked scared, defensive, not at all like the confident firebrand who'd walked into the Oval Office 3 days earlier. Monday, the denaturalization complaint was filed in federal court in D.C., United States versus Ilhan Omar. The complaint laid out the fraud in detail, included exhibits the birth certificate, the marriage records, the immigration applications with lies. Omar's lawyers filed an emergency motion to dismiss, argued the proceedings were politically motivated. The judge and Obama appointee denied the motion. Political motivation doesn't invalidate proceedings if the evidence of fraud is legitimate. We'll evaluate the evidence on its merits. Tuesday, the House voted on expulsion. The final count, 289 to 143. 86 Democrats joined all Republicans. Ilhan Omar was expelled from Congress. She became only the 6th member expelled in U.S. history, the first for immigration fraud and terrorism financing. Wednesday, ICE filed a detainer. Once her citizenship was revoked, she'd be taken into custody pending deportation. Omar fought the denaturalization for 18 months. Her lawyers tried every argument: political persecution, unreliable foreign documents, technical defects in the proceedings. None of it worked. The evidence was too strong. The judge found by preponderance of the evidence that she'd lied on her immigration applications, used a false name, lied about her mother, committed marriage fraud. In August 2026, the judge issued his ruling citizenship revoked. The next day, ICE arrested her at her home in Minneapolis. She was detained at an immigration facility pending deportation. She filed appeals. They were denied. Somalia confirmed they'd accept her as a deport. In November 2026, Ilhan Omar was placed on a deportation flight to Mogadishu. The scene was captured by cameras, her in handcuffs, being escorted onto the plane by ICE officers, looking nothing like the confident congresswoman who'd insulted the president less than 2 years earlier. The flight took off, and America's most prominent progressive congresswoman was gone. Ilhan Omar arrived in Mogadishu in November 2026. The country she'd claimed to flee as a refugee. The country she'd sent money to while living in America. The country she'd referred to as we in intercepted calls. Somalia didn't want her. The government made clear she wasn't welcome in politics, wasn't welcome in public life, was an embarrassment. The woman who'd been deported from America for fraud and terrorism financing. She tried to rebuild, started a small NGO, tried to leverage her name recognition, But without American citizenship, without her congressional platform, without the media that had loved her, she was irrelevant. Her mother in London refused to see her, told reporters she was ashamed of what her daughter had done. Her children stayed in America with her ex-husband, Ahmed Hirsi, who divorced her and got in custody when the fraud came to light. They changed their last name, wanted nothing to do with her. 2 years after her deportation, a Reuters reporter found her living in a small apartment in Mogadishu, working as an interpreter. No political role, no influence, just another person trying to survive in a difficult country. The reporter asked if she had any regrets. "I regret going to that meeting," Omar said. "I regret not taking the deal. I regret fighting. I should have left quietly." Do you regret the terrorism financing, the immigration fraud? She didn't answer that question. Back in America, her deportation became a political lesson, a warning. You can immigrate to America. You can become a citizen. You can even get elected to Congress. But you can't commit fraud to get here. You can't fund terrorists. You can't maintain loyalty to foreign governments. Eventually, the evidence catches up with you. Trump spoke about it at a rally in Ohio in 2027. I gave her a choice. Easy way or hard way. Leave quietly with some dignity or get exposed and deported publicly. She chose the hard way. Bad choice. Very bad choice. She thought she could insult me. Thought she could threaten me. Thought her media friends would protect her. They didn't because we had evidence. Real evidence. And evidence doesn't care about your feelings or your Twitter followers. The crowd roared. She's in Somalia now. Probably wishes she'd taken my deal. But she thought she was tough. Thought she could fight the President of the United States. Found out differently. Some people learn the hard way. The Ilhan Omar case became precedent. Immigration enforcement was strengthened. Denaturalization proceedings were streamlined for fraud cases. Members of Congress faced enhanced vetting for foreign contacts. And every progressive who defended her, who'd called it political persecution, who'd insisted the evidence was manufactured, had to reckon with the fact that it had all been true. The terrorism financing, the immigration fraud, all of it. She'd committed crimes. She'd been caught. She'd been deported. Not because she was Muslim, not because she was progressive, because she'd broken the law. Years later, her story was taught in law schools, immigration law classes about denaturalization, national security classes about terrorism financing, political science classes about congressional ethics. The woman who'd stood in the Oval Office insulting the president, thinking she was untouchable, had learned the hardest possible lesson. Nobody is above the law. Not even a member of Congress. Trump had given her 72 hours to leave quietly. She'd refused, so he'd destroyed her publicly and deported her anyway. She'd thought she had power. She'd been wrong. The evidence had power. The law had power. The president had power. And Ilhan Omar spent the rest of her life in Mogadishu, regretting the day she'd walked into that Oval Office thinking she could bully Donald Trump. He'd smiled, let her rant, then showed her the evidence that ended her career, stripped her citizenship, and sent her back to Somalia. Easy way or hard way?